Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. We're glad you're here. Subscribe to it and give this video a like.
Also, we have this little thing called a podcast down below in the description. Subscribe to that as well. Share it with your friends.
Is Kyle Shanahan ready for Trey Lance? Is he ready to call plays for Trey Lance? Last we heard Kyle Shanahan analyzing his time with Trey Lance, he said it was hard for him, and he underestimated how hard it would be for him, right, to mix Trey in and call an offense for Trey Lance when the defense is playing defense differently for two different quarterbacks. So has Kyle figured things out since then?
Well, I mean, I just think it's going to be much easier to run the plays that he wants to run with a guy that has a better understanding of what they're doing, because we talked about this years ago, and we have a lot of new listeners since then. Because, I mean, a hot topic those first couple of weeks when Jimmy Garoppolo got traded, like, he doesn't know the offense. It's not fair. And we kept going back to Matt Ryan saying, like, it took him a year to learn the offense, right? And they had to spend the summer getting on the same page. It is a complicated offense, right? I mean, the guys talk about it around the league. It's, if you're still bullish on the Rams and McVay only scratching the surface, that would be the pushback, right? They are going to be dramatically better next season running the offense. He was a guy from a smaller school. I mean, I understand they ran a pro-style offense and he was used to being under center, but it's a pretty big, I would say, jump going from whatever his offensive coordinator was at North Dakota State. And I'm not trying to talk shit about those guys at all. They kick ass. They take names. They win national championship after national championship. But going to Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers, and the verbiage of the offense, even if he's repping all the team reps with the scout team and not Jimmy, like you said on the emergency pod, he's still the backup quarterback, so he's still getting the game plan in a 3-ring binder and on his iPad. And he's still every single day of the week sitting there with McDaniel, with Shanahan, with the receivers in the meetings, right? Going over the verbiage, the plans, what's expected on every play from the previous week to what's being installed. Like, he's sitting right there. Now, probably separated, some distance or whatever. You watch the Colts Hard Knocks. They have their team meeting in the bubble.
What do you mean the bubble? Like there's an outdoor bubble?
Yeah, I think they have a practice bubble and they put all the chairs. Is what it looks like. But there's just an element of he has to dramatically know more than he did 2 months ago of what's expected in this offense and how the offense operates. Because for the most part, the last couple months, they run. Like we all say all the time, they're not running trick plays. Like they run variations of the same plays over and over. They work. They have really good players, and the play caller is really good at the timing of the given plays. But wouldn't you say most week in, week out? I guess they've added the Debo at running back element, but their plays have been very similar over the last Kyle Shanahan era of what they look like.
Yeah.
It's not that. I mean, I'm not diminishing its complications, but ultimately, week in, week out, they run a base set of plays and formations. And they really have the Shanahan's entire lives, right?
I wonder.
His offense. I remember being with the Eagles and we played the Houston Texans with him and Kubiak. Now, they were much more consistent running just like outside zone. I would say the 49ers run a little less of the true just outside zone. Peyton Manning used to do this, right? You run as fast as you can as the quarterback and you hand it off and the guy goes. And then you can also cut it back. The Niners haven't run that play as much as like they run the toss play. And now they run to Debo. Someone's going to get killed. But hopefully, I mean, I would not let Debo run that play.
Well, I do wonder if when Kyle was on the plane from the Justin Fields Pro Day, drawing up plays for Trey Lance, if he was drawing up Trey Lance, Debo Samuel run plays. I wouldn't imagine he was drawing up that many. I don't think he expected to have to use Debo Samuel as a running back as much as he had this year. And I wonder if in the last month he has added some of that to what he would do, because he's added it to the game plan for Jimmy Garoppolo. So, of course, he's added it to the game plan for Trey Lance.
Isn't that kind of collegiate, like something you would see at Ohio State or at Florida or at Alabama when they just have a remarkable running quarterback and just a remarkable, like a Jalen Waddle.
Two of them, yeah.
Or like Justin Fields and, Olave. You would make some unique plays for those two guys, right? Maybe an option. Who knows? How would you not have thought about that over the last month?
Ideally, you don't have to do it, but Kyle, I think, deserves a lot of credit for finding ways to get his best. But what do every offensive coordinator you've ever worked with heard talk at a press conference? They all say the same thing. Just got to get the ball to our playmakers in space, help our playmakers in a position to make plays, get our playmakers the ball. So Kyle's done that with Debo. So this is better with Trey Lance running some of those plays because you don't have to give it to Debo every time. And I think it creates, ideally what it creates for Trey is some runs, because I think we'd agree a lot of the runs that he had by design were high contact runs. I mean, 4th down runs up the gut, they had a 3rd and 8 where they ran it with him and then ran it again with him on 4th and 2, and they didn't pick up the first down.
Remember, he was injured after the game, was not available the next couple of weeks.
The knee.
So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I mean, he hasn't even officially been named the starter, which I expect. Well, the Niners don't leak to Schefter, but they'll just announce he's the starting.
Well, I think we'll get some information Wednesday, right? If Garoppolo's out there practicing.
That's what I mean. Or just Trey Lance can be a starter. Trey Lance will talk to the media, because part of it has always been early on, we're could Trey start? But Jimmy would always talk to the media because the starting quarterback has to talk on Wednesdays. Is that big picture? Can he just have back-to-back healthy games? Because he had made one start, and he was. If he was the starter, he would not have been available the following week.
Right.
That feels like a lifetime ago, but that did happen. But a little like Jimmy, he just looked fine after the game, and then it was just an injury that kind of popped up.
There's been a lot of theories about quarterback injuries this year.
I got to go back and watch. He's not a big slider, right?
No.
I mean, that's not really. He's a Ricky Henderson diver.
Yeah, and he's not, I think one of the questions with him is just, has he gotten a little more decisive in the run game? Did the experience of playing NFL football, help him in terms of, I think you and I both felt that he felt a little uncomfortable in the run game initially, but he hasn't had that many opportunities. I mean, what are we talking about? 20 carries around then, maybe a little more in his career. So
I would imagine, and I don't even know if this is the right way to describe it, but an insecurity, a level of confidence that just, it's impossible for it to be there, right? You just kind of feeling yourself out, right? You just feel yourself out, and then you're like, okay, I can do this. And then you're like, I think I can run this guy over. And then you don't. You're like, yeah, I probably need to avoid that. I mean, there's a balancing act of, or maybe it's just as simple as well, you got to pick your spots. If you see Ambry Thomas there, run him over. If you see Isaiah Simmons, who was the 7th pick in the draft and is 6'4", 240 pounds, who runs a 4.4, who beat ETN in a race, he might beat you to the spot. It's just part of it is there had to be a lot going on, right? In a couple years, you'll have scouting reports like, well, when I see Budda Baker there, when I see Jalen Ramsey there, or when I see X player there. He just sees probably players, the game plan, and it might be like that. I mean, it's going to be like that this week. There's just any time you're starting for the first time, you're seeing players. Also, when you did not play Division I football, most of these guys you've never played against. There is an element. How many players do you think Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Najee Harris, Nick Bosa, over their careers in their rookie year, just I played against those 7 guys, right? Every week. I was I know these 6 guys when I go across the field after the game. Or just the basic thing, when you get the game plan, hey, this is your offensive tackle. You're I played this guy 3 years at Iowa. They're just.
Well, how about how about the 2 football teamers, Jonathan Allen and what's his name?
They're literally teammates. Remember
when
when Crosby, who'd they play? Some backup tackle ended up, and it was the guy it was Crosby's teammate at Western Michigan. Remember that? Or Central Michigan?
Oh yeah.
I forget.
Yes, I do remember that. Well, the other day we did have Dylan Radin start an NFL game. Was that Sunday Night Football? The former North Dakota. It was he played with Trey Lance. But it was West. It was.
Well, but his school has produced NFL players. I just don't know how many NFL players they play on their schedule every year, right? He'll be like, oh, those were my teammates from North Dakota State, the 3 practice squad guys, the 2 guys playing in the league. But does South Dakota State, does UC Davis, does Weber State, to me, that's the biggest difference. When you just play in the SEC for 3 years, I mean, can you imagine the amount of NFL players, if you're just a starting SEC player for multiple years, the amount of NFL players that you see once you get to the NFL? Yeah. On a weekly game plan.
Well, I mean, it's, the best players play on the best teams. Those teams win national championships. The best players then go to the NFL. Brian on YouTube says, you guys do a really good job of talking about the potential negative situations with Trey and don't really spend time on how potentially good he can be. There's both, that's a misconception, a falsity. It's untrue. And it annoys me. It actually annoys me a lot. Someone who 20 minutes ago just gave my line on how good I think he's going to be. But if you haven't noticed, most rookie quarterbacks don't come out birthing looking like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson MVP, or Tom Brady. Like, it's hard. There's a lot they have to work through. Yeah, but fully birthed. Like, there is a lot to overcome. And I think part of being a young quarterback in the league is actually about avoiding the mistakes and getting an opportunity to build on the positives and then getting a little more confident and getting a little more confident. That's what it's about today. That's what we're talking about today. We're not talking about Trey Lance 3 years from now. We're talking about Trey Lance today, this week. A guy who's been again, I'm going to say this in a negative way. But he's been a 52% passer. So what is this about? It's about, let's get to 60. Let's get to 58, right? Let's not throw the turnover on the first possession and then the team's playing from behind. These are basic things. But we talk about this with all the quarterbacks. That's it. Like, when you talk about a lot of games, guess what? You don't say if Tom Brady can just go out and throw for 350. No, it's like, can Matt Stafford not throw 3 interceptable balls today? That's going to go a long way to winning the football game. So a lot of it with young players is about minimizing mistakes and then taking advantage of the good opportunities they have. And I think on a fundamental level, this Niners run game is better than it was when Trey Lance last played. Part of the reason it's gotten better is that George Kittle is back and healthy, right? I think Kyle Shanahan is in a much better rhythm for whatever reason, whether it's Ayuk is in a rhythm, whether it's Kyle was bad and now Kyle is good, whether it's they found other ways to use Debo, whether it's Kittle is healthy. But their offense, from a play calling standpoint, I think you'd agree, is in a much better rhythm now than it was at the beginning of the year, even with Jimmy.
Facts.
So I think Trey's walking into a better situation than he was in when the year started, when he played against Arizona. On a simple level, he has practiced with the 49ers more today than he did back when he made his first career start. So he should be naturally better in that regard. And I think to a little bit of a degree, I think Kyle was covering a little bit when he said it was hard to call offense. I think part of the reason it was hard is that he didn't quite know what to trust with his quarterback, right? He didn't really have a lot of body of work to know, here's all the things I can do with Trey. We know that Kyle, you have to earn his trust, and you can lose it real quick as a quarterback. He will kneel on the football with 48 seconds left in the half like that. And so I think he's got to have a better feel. Now, Kyle, I think it's on Kyle to have used, because his backup quarterback is Trey Lance. Like, here we are now at the end of December. We can't get to the post-game press conference with Kyle saying, I don't have a great feel with how to call plays for him. Like, this is part of, he's been your backup quarterback, not your third stringer. So this has to have been part of figuring this out, is being ready for this situation.
I just think, guy, experience matters. Whether you're doing this podcast, we've been doing this thing now 6 years. Whether you're a starting wide receiver, Deebo Samuel started for 4 years in the SEC. Now, he missed time because of injuries, but he was a senior. And then he got to the league, and by about midseason on a Super Bowl team, he was kicking ass and taking names. Ayuk didn't have as much experience. Really just got to shine for one season in a bad Pac-12. It's taking him some time, right? Kittle is a good example. Fucking fifth-year senior at Iowa, right? When he got to the NFL, he immediately could block. And then they figured out how to use him as he could just play. And Trey Lance, of all the players that we've ever seen get drafted that high, probably is one of the most unique backgrounds we've ever seen, given the level of comp and given because of COVID, his season was canceled. And then he was only really there 2 seasons, and one of them he redshirted because it turns out they have the Alabama of D1AA, and they had an NFL quarterback. So he didn't even play, right? I mean, it's a little Trubisky-ish. But even Mitch, he was at North Carolina for 3 years. Now he redshirted, backed up, and then he got to start, but it's an extra year longer than Trey. Like, Trey missed a season. The season did not happen. So then he gets to the NFL, and you're already behind the 8 ball of just reps. If anyone that knows a football coach, whether it's in high school, college, or the pros, the word reps gets used over and over. And when I got into this business with you talk about reps in media stuff. But it's no different when I scouted. Like, you get better the more reps you have writing up players. You get better selling, if you're a car salesman, the more cars you sell, the more reps you get. Reps matter in every aspect of life. It's a fact. It's not even debatable. It doesn't mean that early on, before your reps get to like 10,000 hours or whatever, you can't have success.
Right.
But you tend to be an outlier, especially in like higher level industries, higher level competition, right? It's just a fact. And so there's nothing wrong to be like, this guy's going to need some time. Hell, I was texting with an NFL exec the other day talking about Herbert, and his comment was like, the guy just needs some reps. Like, the more NFL reps you get. Like, at this point in time now, think of the reps Mahomes has relative to Herbert. This is his 4th year as a starter, right? At the highest level. They've been kicking ass and taking names from day one. Every rep he's had. We talk a lot about Stafford. His reps have kind of been the opposite. Like, none of them have mattered. When's the last time Mahomes has had a rep in a game that did not matter? Has it happened?
Well, I mean, his week 17 rep mattered, right? When he was Alex Smith's backup and played in a game that didn't matter, but the reps mattered, right?
But once he became the starter, has he really taken a snap that didn't matter? Because even in some of the random games they've played as the game's gone on, they've been the hunted, though.
Yeah. I mean, he's played some snaps like they didn't matter.
No, I'm not saying he's perfect. But my point is, legitimately, of the 16 games for 3 straight years, 80% of them were just big games, right? You know? Yeah. I mean, every time that he doesn't play a shitty team, the game matters because the team's trying to beat him. They play on prime time. But Lamar, they just have a ton of reps. And those guys already had a lot of reps playing in college. And you just improve. Like, Patrick Mahomes now is better than the Patrick Mahomes that won the MVP. That's a fact. He just understands more football. And he's going to be better in 2 or 3 years. No different than Aaron Rodgers is better at playing NFL football. Tom Brady talks about all the time. Like, football's easier now than it was 15 years ago. 15 years ago, he's like the 07 Pats quarterback. One of the greatest teams we've ever seen. So so part of it is just unknown. You know, in the scouting world, people get very nervous with 1-year starters, even if the 1 year their tape is worthy of like a top 15 pick. Because you're just like, well, is this? That's where it is easier with a Herbert who has 4 years, right? Or a guy like, you know, I think Kenny Pickett's been starting for a long time. Guys that have a large body of work. But the reps. I was watching last night, Ian Book against Miami. And Ian Book, I didn't realize this. Maybe I did, but I definitely forgotten that he's from Sacramento, Oak Ridge. And obviously he went to Notre Dame, was a several-year starter there. And he's an athletic guy. He ran a 4.6. And I looked up his Notre Dame stat page. He had ran for 17 touchdowns in college. Now, obviously, I'm sure if we went back and did a highlight pick, like not all of those, some were probably quarterback sneaks, but I would imagine some of them were 10, 20-yard runs, right? He is an athletic guy. And there were several times last night where I think he's used to kind of running and probably being, even at Notre Dame, and they play a big-time schedule, being one of the better athletes on the field, probably every team they played besides like Alabama. And Christian Wilkinson, who's from Clemson, who's, you know, was a former first-round pick of Miami, a couple times he tried to run away, and it was clear, like, I don't think you're faster than this guy. And once the linebackers got in space, it was like, bro, you cannot, and I don't even blame him, but the speed of the game is in a different world. And this guy played at Notre Dame, who made the playoffs multiple times when he was the starting quarterback. Now do Trey Lance, North Dakota State, playing Weber State. Even if he's going to be an all-time really good player for the next decade, it's a learning process. The Arizona game was a learning process. He's lucky. His one game, to me, came against, at the time, a big-time powerhouse defense. And they still are. I mean, he went against a really good defense. Like, his one rep was not against the Jags, right, or the Chargers. It was against a team that athletes everywhere. Yeah. And I would say he had one of the moments that really stand out of the season, right? That goal line collision where he lost.
Where it looked like he was absolutely going to score. If you go back and watch it, it looked, of course he's going to score. He's going to walk in.
Do you think he's ever lost that collision in his life?
No.
Can't have.
I don't think he's ever, I would imagine if we stopped all the film in the moment where he's almost going to score, he's never gotten met at the goal line like he did. It was wide open. He was going to score, and then it just closed. It was over. There's a moment in Monday Night Football where Ian Book's racing out of the pocket, and Steve Levy's like, Ian Book, don't forget, he's a good athlete. And he just immediately goes from good athlete to swallowed up because it's a lot faster in the NFL. He's a good athlete in college. He's a good athlete, period. Humanity. He's probably a plus athlete among quarterbacks. But quarterbacks that are of his athletic ability know they can't get away when they've been in the league.
And part of it, in the way the game is built now and the athletes and the way they train now, it's a much faster game. Like defensive tackles that have come into the league the last 4 or 5 years run 4.6s, you know? Like the guy, the middle linebacker that runs five flat doesn't exist. The linebackers run 4.5. The nickel corners run 4.4. Some of the defensive ends run 4.5. Like that, those are just the athletes now. So it's just, there's a speed element to the game of football that is just, you could say it's softer now than it was, for sure. I mean, just because they've led it has never been faster, though. It has never been faster.